Look, MLS is known for its silly and unique rules. It's a league built on parity with the idea any team can win the league any given season. In theory, this is a good thing to build a model similar to the NFL or NBA, but the low salary cap hurts teams from building quality squads or depth to compete at higher levels. This is something MLS needs to change, in my opinion, if it ever wants to be a top five league in the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLS Moves. Please make sure you like this video down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're trying to hit 10K by the end of the year, but more specifically, we're trying to hit 7,000 by the end of this month. We are 350 subscribers away. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and hit that little bell notification so you never miss a video. Now, on to the video. Danny Solana, we have an interesting topic to talk about today. We're going to talk about MLS rules, talk about what a general manager who just won MLS Cup had to say about the rules in MLS and how it's affected his team. And they just lost again. So the team is winless and through 13 games this year, which is absolutely crazy. But before we get into that, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. You know, it's a beautiful day of the week, a beautiful week. There's some midweek football going on today. So look, it can't get any better.
No, exactly. And so let's just get into it, right? This is obviously a topic you and I are very passionate about. MLS roster rules, or the lack thereof, because they don't really change anything. It's been the same for a very long time. Recently, Will Kuntz, the general manager of LA Galaxy, was on a podcast with Tim Howard and Landon Donovan. And he talked about the roster rules and how it's difficult to, I guess, build off of a great season because in MLS, when you do have success, normally you have to get rid of certain players. You can't re-sign certain guys. There's roster restrictions or budget, not necessarily budget cuts, but it's not easy just to sign all the players that were part of your winning team. And he talked about how he worked at the league office. He knows the rules in and out. And he knows why they do that, but he doesn't necessarily agree with it. And how MLS really prevents teams from building quality depth. There isn't teams aren't 16 guys deep, right? They don't have that type of depth on the squads. But let's start off with this. So the LA Galaxy, obviously, like I said, haven't won a game in 13 games. Tell me what you think about what he said as far as these rules and how it's affected his team.
First of all, I'm surprised, Will, because not a lot of front office folks in the MLS come out and speak out against the rules. So I was surprised to hear, the general manager of one of the franchises in MLS come out and speak out against the rules. We've heard some owners like Jorge Mas come out and say, he's willing to spend money. He wants the league to let them open their pockets. And we've heard some owners, but never really front office people come out and speak out against the rules. So I was actually excited that somebody would, in a high-ranking position on a team would come out and start talking about that. I think that's what we need in order for the rules to get changed. I was also a little surprised at him saying, he's worked at the league office, so he knows the rules. He knows why they don't change them. And I think it's interesting the way that he worded his response to Landon and to Tim, because this could be the first domino to fall, before the rest of them start to fall. This could be the first front office guy to get out there and start making some noise and allow other front office guys to join him. And I think that's the only way that we're going to get the rules changed within the MLS is if we have enough front office folks get together and opine and go over to Don Garber and the rest of the league and say, hey, we need to spend more money. We need to do that. If not, we're not going to be able to keep up with the other leagues. So, my answer to your question was I was excited and I was surprised both at how he worded it and what he said in that interview.
No, I agree. It's good to have transparency and him being open and honest about how he knows the league, and then obviously saying his criticisms of how things are ran from a league-wide perspective. But Solana, think about this, man. What other team in any other league around the world would win the championship? I can't think of any in recent memory. And then the following year is in last place in the entire league. And here's the crazy thing too. It's not just like they're first to 20th or first to 18th. There are 30 teams in Major League Soccer. They went from first to 30th in the league in just 1 year. Now they do have injuries, but they're not allowed to really build depth to where they can make it through those injuries. That Ricky Puig is out, obviously. They can't. They're just screwed. There is no temporary DP they could sign to fill his void or fill his shoes while he is rehabbing his ACL tear. So it just sucks that it's like they don't want, even if he was healthy, they would have probably taken a step back. They don't want teams to build on success. If Miami, your team, were to win MLS Cup in 2025, it's like they would be punished in 2026 because of their success. And that's just not that's not an effective way to run a league, man. You don't want to punish teams for being good. Why? What the hell does that do?
I mean, unfortunately, that seems to be the American way of sports. They love this word and this idea of parity so that fans from other, especially small market teams who usually don't have the cash to spend like the big market teams can remain interested in their team and will continue going to games, and they're still able to win some games here and there. And we've seen that because Inter Miami this year, I thought they put together one of the deepest teams in MLS history with all the signings that they did, but we've seen them struggle from time to time. And so that now makes me think, is it because of these roster rules, these MLS special rules that are in place? Is that really what's kind of hindering them a bit and not allowing them to become this super team that's what we expected when they signed all these players? Because, their guys have been healthy, unlike the LA Galaxy. Joseph Paintsil is out. So is Gabriel Peck. So is Ricky Puig. That's their three best players. But, I mean, to answer your original question, I've never seen a team win the championship and then be in complete last place, 13 games winless. The only thing that I can remember was Spain winning the World Cup, and then in the next World Cup, they got grouped. That's the only thing that I could think of. But in terms of actual leagues, I can't think of a league in the world where the team won the championship and then they were in last place the next year.
Yeah, I can only think of maybe like a 7, 8 spot slide the next year. Maybe you go to 8th, 9th place from first. But one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here too is just because we've talked about this numerous times. We talked about just all the things we would change with the league. And look, I don't think parity is necessarily a horrible idea because it does keep things a little bit more competitive. But cheap parity is bad. When you have parity with a $5 million salary cap, that is where you're essentially producing mediocrity. And I made a post talking about the rules never change. They're the same. They haven't really done anything crazy in MLS in several years. The U22 spot is okay, but when you think about it, you're just signing a young, inexperienced player. Inter Miami have several U22 players, and only one of them have really panned out, and that was Diego Gomez, and he ended up going to Brighton. But the U22 rule is not something you can bank on because you're getting someone who you don't know what they're going to be. It would be more effective, obviously, to sign a vet or a player who is in their prime rather than someone you're hoping will be good. And I just don't understand, like the Champions League. Hopefully, to God, MLS wins the CONCACAF Champions Cup because we watched that last year. The Crew lost to Pachuca, and it was because there's a couple reasons why they lost. There was the food poisoning and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's because one league has no rules. They can sign as many players as they want at any fee they want, and then one league has several rules and hurdles. They cannot just do whatever. Well, they could if they wanted to, but the league doesn't let them do that. It's just very frustrating because we are our own worst enemy at this point. We're our own worst enemy. No one is telling us to do this but ourselves, and everybody is just craving. And it really sucks that the Galaxy, their MLS Cup championship last year has just been completely washed away, the momentum and how special that was. They have this silver badge on the left side of their kit, if I'm not mistaken, that commemorates that they won the MLS Cup in 2024. And this is what they're showing it up with, a winless season through 13 games.
Absolutely. And even to take you a little step further, Will, something in current events, Angel Correa, who we all know plays for Atletico de Madrid, just signed a contract with a team in Mexico for $6 million.
Yeah.
So he could have came to the MLS, and he's a player who is essentially in his prime. He's in his late 20s, right? A player who's done very well in Atletico Madrid, both as a starter and a substitute. He could have came to the MLS, but what's the problem? we have the rule where you can't pay him $6 million because then he would be a DP.
Yeah.
And so because of that, players are choosing to continue to go to Liga MX over to come here. And the players that are coming here are either players that are past their prime and that are just cashing in big bucks, like Messi, like Suarez, like Busquets. Nothing bad. Everybody can agree they're past their prime. They're just cashing in their big bucks. We have Kevin De Bruyne, who I would also say is past his prime. Now he's interested in coming to play at Austin. I'm sure he's going to make a lot of money if they're able to get his rights from Chicago, and they're going to pay him a lot of money. So I think I'm with you, Will. I think they need to adjust the rules so that the players that they can bring into the league are not these either young players or past their prime players. They need to be in that area where they're bringing in that 24-year-old to 28-year-old player who's played in Europe or who has played in South America and hasn't gotten a chance or wants to get a change of air from where they're currently at. And they can open their wallet and give them 5, 6, 7 million without having to put a tag as a designated player on them. And you can fill up your roster with these types of players, and you'll have a more competitive roster as well, especially if you're going to have teams starting to go into the Club World Cup, which I think Inter Miami and Seattle are going to get absolutely mopped with what I'm seeing, especially watching the Champions League. I mean, it's unbelievable, especially the semifinals, how those teams play. They play one touch, they play fast, they play quick. The MLS is 10 speeds behind what Europe is playing right now, and it's because of the types of players that they have on their rosters.
Well, and also too, as far as just the way the rosters are constructed or the mechanisms they have, when you don't have depth, when you have a player injured, the quality just drastically, the guy behind the guy is just not good. Like, with Suarez, obviously is not a great example this year because he's not been good, but Abondo is a young player who's just not ready to be the guy. So if Suarez is out for an extended period of time, they're in trouble. They don't have anybody. They have to play Messi up top instead of anybody else. They're having to play Messi up top, and this is going to be the second game in a row, I think, tonight where he is playing as a number 9. So you don't have depth if there's injuries. That's a huge issue, right? You don't have quality players against each other in training, which was a point that Kuntz made. You have 16 guys, 17 guys on the training pitch, battling it out for spots, iron sharpening iron, making everybody better from a week-to-week basis in training. In MLS, you have like maybe 6 or 7 guys, and then there's a huge drop-off after that. So from top to bottom, just the whole way it's constructed really does water down the product. And look, I don't think you and I are saying, hey, well, maybe you would, because I know you would like to see the spending go up, and I would too, honestly. Like, I would accept having it just increased 3 times what it is now, 4 times, because we would see a huge jump in quality just from making it $20 million salary cap. I can only imagine what it would be if it was like a $50 million salary cap. And a lot of people don't want that to happen because they think their teams will be left behind. But listen, Solana, if you're spending $20 million on salary cap and your team can't pay that, then you're in the wrong sport, man. Like, you should not be owning a team if you can't afford $20 million. I mean, we're not saying $200 million wage bills like some of the teams we've seen in Europe. We're talking about $20 million. But if MLS did that, that would go a long way.
I agree, and to reference one of the reports that came out earlier this week, looking at all the franchises and the teams, the clubs who are worth most money. How many MLS teams were on that list? And you're gonna tell me, and they're worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And you're gonna tell me, like you said, they can't afford a $20 million salary cap?
19 of the 50 most valuable clubs in the world were MLS teams, and Don
19 of
Garber
32 clubs.
Yeah,
19 of that's more than half.
Don Garber was bragging about that, and then I responded to him and said, "Okay, now do spending. Compare the spending between those two clubs, or not the two clubs, but all the clubs. Compare that. Then let's get into that." So I just don't understand. Like, they were waiting for an opportunity to spend. They kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and they just wanted to see what would happen. You got the World Cup in 2026. You got Messi here. What else? If they're not doing it by now, and I've had people message me, call me, and say, Will, if they're not going to do it now, are they ever going to truly do it? They've got owners in the league like Jorge Mas, like you said, that wants to spend his own money and build the best team he possibly can build. If they're not doing it now, they're like, Will, are they ever going to do this? Like I'm starting to believe this is never going to happen. So it is concerning, man. Like, and Don Garber definitely is to blame for this in a lot of ways because he's the one advising these owners what to do. Some people were trying to say, oh, you can't blame Don Garber, it's the owners. Who do you think is advising the owners? Who do you think is telling the owners, hey, yeah, who do you think is telling the owners, hey, just trust the process, man. Everything's good. Like, just keep doing what we're doing. Everything is fine.
Well, who votes for the commissioner? The owners. So clearly the owners and the commissioner are on the same side. And yes, I think it's Don Garber is definitely one of the most, I guess, responsible figures and probably the pinpoint head on who to blame because he's the one that represents the owners. Maybe not all of them, but there's also some owners in the MLS who own teams in Europe. Jorge Mas is one of that. He owns a team in Spain. He's used to being able to spend that type of money. There are other owners as well in the
CFG.
MLS. Yeah,
Red Bull ownership group.
Exactly. I mean, and not only that, but NYCFC, Citigroup. I mean, come on, they've got the money to spend. So, and Will, the MLS is, I think, the only American sports league where the salary cap doesn't go up every year. Because I know in basketball and the NBA, the salary cap increases every year. The same thing happens in football. It increases every year, even if it's a slight amount. But for some reason, the MLS always remains at $5 million and it never goes up. It doesn't matter.
It does increase, but there was a pause for 3 years where it didn't increase because of the pandemic. They had an agreement, like a revised CBA, where they kept it at like 4.9 million for 3 years. But it goes up very, very, like, I don't even think it's 5%. I think it's like 3 to 4% increase each year. The NFL is like, I think 10 to 15%.
Right. And then the NBA had that one year where they went from like 120 million to like 175 million, where everybody went crazy spending that one summer. And so, I mean, could it take something like that in the MLS where they go, hey, 1 year we're going to go from 5 million. Okay, it's going to be 20. And then you're going to see everybody spending? Maybe. But I think it's going to be a while before we see the league open its pockets and really make a move into that direction. And unfortunately, I think it's going to hurt the league. We've seen, the league, even as they bring star players, it still isn't getting the recognition and the viewership that we thought that they were going to get when some of these players got here. And we're seeing that with some of the viewership numbers on Apple, as well with some of the games that are on Fox Sports. We're seeing some of the viewership stay at kind of stagnant at where it was before. And I think it's hurting the league. It goes in hand with spending. If you don't spend, you get the same players, you get the same, and just like you said, you can't get better substitutes, unfortunately, because your rosters are very top heavy. Just like you said, you have 6-7 guys who are fantastic players, and then the rest are average to below average. So unfortunately for some of these guys, they're not going to want to come in their prime if that's how it's going to be. And really, they MLS and Don Garber, I mean, unfortunately, they really need to do something about this, because the league is now starting to become stagnant, even though they want to convince you that it's growing. And I really don't see how it's growing when you're not bringing in more names. And the only name that you have right now is Messi. He's the only real name that you have in this league, and all the promotion is all around him. So you need to bring in 2, 3, 4, 5 of those guys so that you can spread the promotion around them and grow the league that way. Don't you think?
100%. And that's why I thought 26 was the year they were going to really let things loose. Maybe even change the calendar, which I don't want to get people riled up by bringing that up. But, at least I thought they would do something to like introduce a new mechanism, loosen things up, maybe add a couple more DP spots, which are they have the same amount of DP spots, Solana, that they had in 2011. They have not increased the DP allotment per team since 2011, which is crazy. So 14 years, it's the same. And the crazy part is when they introduced the rule in 2007, they went from 1 to 2 to 3 in a 4-year period, but they've kept it at 3 since 2011. I thought they were going to try to sign some big stars for after the World Cup, bring them over here, or maybe even sign some guys before the World Cup and say, hey, you see that guy there? That guy plays in Major League Soccer. That guy's really good. Or you probably already know him. Hey, Romelu Lukaku came to MLS before the World Cup, and he plays in MLS. You should check the league out. I thought that was what they were going to do. Put all their chips in the middle of the table, really bank on getting people to cross over after that and come check MLS out. But if it's only Messi afterwards, they're not going to bring any new people in that weren't already watching it. They needed to get some people from the World Cup that average fans grew to know, or saw score an amazing goal, whoever it may be. Try to get that guy over here and say, hey, you saw him this summer playing the biggest tournament in the world. Come watch him play in Major League Soccer. And I think they're still wanting to sign Christian Pulisic. Like I think that's one of their plans to maybe get someone like him. That's just not enough, man. You need more than just one or two guys. You need to have like 10 to 15 guys. And I thought about this. Imagine if we had this Saudi Arabia's investment. Now, they have overpaid, right? Obviously, they've overpaid for a lot of guys. I'm not saying necessarily do that, but just allow to spend more. And you had the U.S. media market. So you took Saudi Arabia's big name players, right? And brought them over to MLS. How much would that have exploded? How much bigger of a deal would that have been?
Would have been huge. It would have been absolutely huge. But, I think the reason why, and now we're starting to, kind of guess and understand why certain things are happening, how they're happening. And I think the reason why they kept the DP at 3 was because the idea was to have young players come up through the system and play your homegrowns and play your young players. So they didn't want to have, like in Europe, where you have Manchester City has like 6 or 7 would-be DPs, or maybe 8 DPs, and the rest are kind of like camp players. Manchester City.
Oh, their whole roster's DPs?
Well, you get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah,
I guess. And so you don't have like Manchester City is not busting out young studs every single year. They usually are in the buyer's market and they're buying the top players every year. So in the MLS, I think their idea, the original idea, was to have the young players come up, play in here. But unfortunately, American soccer fans and the ones who tune in are really soccer fans in Europe, and they tune in really to Europe, and they want to see that style of play here. So I think that's why it didn't work out for U.S. soccer and for the MLS in their original strategy. And that's why now in 2025 is when they need to maybe sit down and relook at everything again and say, okay, the first 25, 30 years, we had a plan. It didn't work how we wanted it to. Let's start adapting to how the rest of the world works and see if we can, with our marketing strategies, with our money, with our owners, become one of the top teams top leagues in the world.
So the best player arguably in the world right now is number 19 for Barcelona, Lamine Yamal. Arguably the best player in the world right now. Solana. He was not given a spot in the starting 11 for Spain when they won the Euros, or for Barcelona when they just won the league. He earned that spot. Barcelona didn't give him anything. He broke his way under Xavi, and Hansi Flick, obviously, I think has helped him maybe take it up to another level, but he wasn't given a spot. All spots have to be earned, regardless of your age or what part of your career you're in. You need to, like, Noah Allen is not playing because they're forcing him. Javier Mascherano is forcing him to play because, to get a homegrown player some minutes. He just beat out Toto Alvarez. He beat out David Martinez. He beat out all these guys, and Javier Mascherano thinks he's one of the best center backs on the roster, like one of the top 2 center backs, and that's why he's been, partnering with Maxi Falcone. That's how it's supposed to be. And here's the thing: Noah Allen has had the best season of his career. He's 21, 22 years old this year, I think, something like that. But he earned it. He ran away with it, and he's a better player for it.
Yeah, he just turned 21. He featured for the U22 Greek national team.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he's going to get a call up, for the World Cup if he continues this great form that he's in. And he's definitely in the best form that he's been in his entire career. And I don't know if Mascherano is the guy to credit for that. I think it's Tata Martino, because Tata Martino was the guy who originally started playing him as a center back and saw him as a center back. And not only that, and not really to get into the coaching thing in Miami, but Tata Martino is a very special guy. He brought in Diego Gomez. He brought in Matias Rojas. He brought in some of these young guys, even Toto Aviles, he brought him in. And I don't think Toto Aviles is a bad player. I think Tata had a great eye for talent, and that's the difference between him and Mascherano. Mascherano doesn't have a great eye for talent. He's just kind of putting the puzzles or the pieces, kind of where they fall, the puzzle pieces where they fall. And I think that's another big thing in the MLS that we need more guys like Tata Martino who have a good eye for talent recruiting, because a lot of times I see some of these MLS teams reach and they sign an Argentinian, they sign a Brazilian, they sign a Colombian, and they overpay. And and I understand why they overpay. They need to overpay because there's competition from the other leagues. But if they had better recruiting, if they had better scouting, they could find more gems like a Gabriel Peck. They could find more gems in Argentina, like Joaquin Pereira, who's now playing for Minnesota United and is having a fantastic season. There are hidden gems, and you can get them for good money. The problem is that I don't think the scouting and the recruiting in the MLS is up to the standards that it needs to be.
There's plenty of examples. Jean Duran, who was sold to Saudi for like 70, 80 million. We originally went to Chicago Fire for like 2 million, and then they sold him for 18 million to Aston Villa, if I'm not mistaken. And then, Diego Gomez is the biggest example. 2.75 million euros to buy him from Paraguay. Forgot which club it was he was in Paraguay, but 2.75 million.
Cerro Porteño.
So 2.75 million euros flips him for 15 million a little bit over a year later. That's good business. That's what you need to do. And see, that's the biggest point I could make about why spending is important. If you can get more talent like that and they can showcase their abilities, then you will make more money. Imagine if you could. Now, I don't want the whole roster to be young guys. I think there needs to be veterans and players in their prime mixed in with some young guys, right? But if you can have like a solid team, instead of being 6 guys deep, right? Imagine if you were 10 to 11 quality players deep on Miami's team, and then you have like 4 or 5 Diego Gomez level players in the mix who can showcase their talent, and then you could sell those guys for 15 million after paying 2.75. That's just good business, and you can take that money and reinvest it and buy more players and flip them. Like I honestly think that that's the model. And MLS, one of my proposals they could do, right, to make it organic instead of just forced spending, right? Just give everybody all this money. Encourage teams who sell players, let them use their money. Currently, as it's constructed, Solana, if you sell a player, you can convert up to $3 million of their salary into GAM, or their fee, into GAM.
Right.
If they were able to convert all $15 million of Diego Gomez's transfer fee into GAM, imagine what kind of roster Miami could have been organically by just selling one of their players, what they could have built with that amount of money. Because they've been doing I think they've done a decent job this year building their roster. It's not as good as I thought it was going to be, but I just think, imagine if they had 5 times more money, which is what they would have had by selling Diego Gomez, what else they could have built.
Well, I think they could have brought in some better players. Some of the younger players who are maybe better. They wouldn't have had to go for so many loans like they had to do because of the roster rules. And a lot of teams are doing that. They're getting, and Inter Miami has done the best job doing that in getting players on loans versus purchasing them. And that's really helped them out. But I mean, you hit the nail on the coffin, Will, with that rule being expanded and allowing them to spend that money. Maybe they wouldn't have brought in Alan Obando. Maybe they would have brought in somebody a little bit better, a little bit older, that they could have spent $3, $4, $5 million on and taken a portion of that. Or they could have taken the $15 million and split it up into 5 players and paid them $3 million each. And it would have been just as good, or maybe players that were just as good as Diego Gomez, or maybe even better, paying them $3 million. But if you're only allowing them to convert $3 million of that $15 million, then what? That other $12 million either goes to the league or goes into the pocket of the owner. I mean, at the end of the day, is this a league where you're trying to make money, or is this a league where you're trying to feature players and sell players? Because if the owners are trying to make money, then we're not, this isn't the right league. This, soccer is not about that. Soccer is about giving the people what they want, letting the players play and not really making money. It's not like a business like that. At least I don't look at it that way.
Yeah. So I just want to summarize what I would change, and I might make another video about this in the near future. I would get rid of discovery rights because it's the stupidest thing ever. It's really dibs, like calling a player having the first right to sign them. It's stupid. Nobody discovered Kevin De Bruyne or Neymar or Messi in MLS. Nobody discovered them. So you got to get rid of that. I would expand the DP rule to 5 because I think you need to have at least 5 players of that quality on your roster. I would change it to where transfer fees, Danny, do not count towards if you're DP or not, just salary. Because there's a lot of guys you would buy whose salary would fit underneath or would not be considered a DP just based on the salary. It'd be like 1.5. They could be a TAM player, but because they are $8 million transfer fee, that would make them a DP. So get rid of the transfer fee dictating if you're a designated player or not. And then also just increase the cap by double, 10 million. You do that, increase the DP to 5. Also get rid of the transfer fee accounting for the DP and then double the salary cap to 10 million. You would probably see the league increase by double in quality in the next year or two. Double. And listen, I got to be honest, okay? MLS has improved. Anyone saying that is just, they're lying. It has improved from 10 years ago, from 2015. It has improved. It was here. It's no here doubt. Now, right? It's here. But you, I, all the people that watch the league know it could be here. This is where it should be, or it could be. It shouldn't just be here. And with 2026, that's your golden opportunity to take it to that next level. So hopefully we can keep voicing our frustrations. General managers like Will Kuntz saying that some of the rules are kind of dated and, hurt teams, especially ones that win. Jorge Mas, pushing for changes. Steve Cherundolo was talking about how they needed to have, more salary cap flexibility, especially playing in Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup, FIFA Club World Cup, all these tournaments. Hopefully we keep saying this and eventually things will change. I want to get your final thoughts on the salary cap rules and just MLS rules in general. What's your final thoughts on all this?
I mean, since the beginning, since day one that you and I started talking, I've been on the train of they need to get rid of all the spending and just allow the owners to spend whatever they want. I think you've convinced me a little bit. I don't think they should open the rules that much. I think just by doubling or tripling the actual current cap, making it like we talked about earlier, 10 million or 15 million, I think you'll give the teams enough flexibility to now go out and buy some of those players. I love the addition of the rule that you're talking about to get rid of the transfer fee counting towards the cap, because again, that would help out in, hey, you pay the transfer fee that is on the side, has nothing to do with it, but we're going to pay you $1 million salary, falls right under the cap. I think that's fantastic. I think those two rules are just going to make the MLS much, much better. Now, I don't know about the 5 DP rule. I don't think they should have any rule. I think it should just be how it is kind of like overseas in some of the leagues where you can have only X number of players from outside the country, like maybe like 10 international players. Doesn't matter if they're DPs or not, but maybe get rid of the whole DP rule and just allow them to sign, players for whatever it is under whatever salary cap or whatever, and see if they can make it a little bit into how Europe does. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the rules that are currently in place in the MLS, just don't allow the MLS to grow. We've talked about it for the last 30 minutes. And I mean, I'm on board with exactly what you're saying. I'm a little bit iffy on the 5 DP rule. I think it would be a cool rule. But personally, I don't think there should be any DPs. And I think that, they should just allow the teams to buy whoever they want without having any designations. No U22s, no homegrowns, none of that stuff. Just regular, hey, this is exactly.
Yeah, I know. And that's an interesting point. I think they just want to, they've always tried to model themselves after the NFL, but the problem is they don't have NFL level spending. So it's like you have the NFL, but like a bad watered down version of the NFL with like, imagine the NFL's 200, it's like the salary cap's like 250 million. Now they do have a 53 man roster, but imagine if the NFL spending was like 5 million, how much worse the NFL would be. It'd be terrible. So we will see what happens. It's going to be an interesting thing to follow. We're going to keep talking about this, obviously, because we need to see change. Before I let you go, Solana, where can the people follow you and find your stuff at?
All right, guys, you can find all my socials at Dice El Dani. That's on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, anywhere. I'm always, chiming in and, talking about Inter Miami, talking about the MLS, and really, just I'm one of those guys that I'll respond to almost anybody. So if you want to have a chat about football, just give me a tweet and we'll have a chat.
Make sure you check them out. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Until next time, I'll see you all soon.